only what's best for us. With the same vehemence that accelerated Christian education decried homosexuality, it also insisted that children forever be nothing but subservient. Compliantly, we absorb the personal wisdom of whichever random adult Christian happened to feel like sharing it. Blessedly, all of our grown authority figures had fully unraveled the mysteries of what he really wanted. We had to trust and obey, for there was no other way to be happy in Jesus, but to trust and obey. Naturally, self-confidence and self-esteem were wretched human concepts of self-worship to be inoculated against at all costs. To guide us through our perilous childhood journey, the third edition of Paces introduced a rigidly paneled comic strip. These cartoons featured a predominantly Caucasian cast of hurriedly drawn kids going to an ACE school in Everytown, USA called Highland. The main protagonist was Ace Verchison, and a godlier little boy this world had never seen. Recognizable by chestnut bangs, wide blue eyes, and his general by-the-book opinion, Verchison only ever got merits in school. Racer Loyalton was another character, dark-haired, freckled, and always pushing too hard about having fun. His sinful tomfoolery caused him to commit an imperial ton of dire mistakes over the course of the cartoon panels, such as wearing unshined shoes or not closing his eyes during prayer. Thankfully, Ace was ever close to rebuke Racer whenever he got caught up in the hands of the enemy. Their sidekick was a bit of a bumbler, subtly named Pudge Meekway. Roly-poly and frightened, he looked exactly like Loyalton, only drawn plump-cheeked and love-handled. Virtuously, Verchison didn't judge Meekway's running to fat, unlike Racer, who tended to mock his slowness and clumsiness. Christy Lovejoy and Sandy McMurphy elucidated the perspective on the female side of things. They unwaveringly wore hairstyles with long bangs neatly fluffed like a mirrored set of Nike cowlicks. A large percentage of their panels was spent dialoguing about every Christian female's most important crossroads moment. Like how to tactfully inform the little sister character, pigtailed Becky, that the hem of her dress had arisen too high. Or clarifying the answer as to what a girl should do when coming home to a sink full of dishes somehow missed by their mother. Not your brother, you get to work. Another female character was petite Susie Self-Will. Only her black hair and rebellious hair clip wearing habit made her distinguishable from the other girls, along with her haughty, ungodly nature. There was this one time when Self-Will wore a sleeveless dress, and another time she only pretended to sing during choir practice. The future was looking extra hot for Susie, especially when a lanky, scuffed-up bicycle thief named Ronnie Vane entered the frame. Ronnie was prone to wearing brown khakis and donning bomber jackets because he hated God and wanted to be his own master. As the years progressed, Vane even started greasing his over-the-collar dark hair into a ducktail, in tandem with falling into the bad habit of missing payments on his poorly drawn motorcycle and riding it without insurance or a helmet. At some point he also started chewing incessantly on a toothpick, which I thought looked kind of cool. Juxtapose was a far less prevalent set of Negro characters, with their star, Booker Thriftmore, as the black equivalent of Ace Verchison, while his friend, Miriam Peace, did her best to be Christy Lovejoy. She even attempted the white girl's hair wave swoosh, which implied endless hours of applying weaves and perms. And yet, in spite of their best efforts, the black kids seldom got to hang out with the Caucasians, living as they did in a distant suburb of Highland called Harmony, where they went to a separate ACE school hosted by a different church. Meanwhile, through all of this edifying storytelling, salvific father figures ruled over submissive wife characters who unflaggingly sewed, cleaned, and cooked. The men confidently impressed upon their sons the male's taxing role of being God's chosen head of the family, whilst encouraging their daughters to blossom into their helpmeet mothers. One such fatherly lesson plan embraced full political, in an English pace, insert titled Wisdom. With the unwavering confidence of a man of God, Mr. Lovejoy assertively laid out the intricacies of the Christians' ongoing battle against the godless left. Quote, "In every language there is a right," he explained. "The word right comes from the same root as the words righteous and righteousness. Scripture always identifies God's right hand, but not his left. We say, 'You're right,' meaning you're correct. We never say, 'You're left.'" The word left in English, the Romance languages, Greek, Hebrew, and hundreds of other languages conveys the idea of sinister or reckless. The principle is consistent worldwide. When men reject God's absolutes, government either becomes one of consensus, in which officials do whatever the majority agrees is acceptable for the present, or government is ruled by a dictator who set himself up as the final authority. That places Hitler, Caesar, Stalin, and other dictators on the left as humanists. The closer a nation walks with God, the fewer government regulations are needed to rule the people. Politicians who reject God's absolutes and believe in extensive government regulations are called liberals. They are way over on the left and are very humanistic. People will either be ruled by biblical absolutes from their hearts, requiring less government, or be ruled by humanistic laws enforced by powerful government authority. That's why we need biblical education." Unquote. As to my personal connection with God, our relationship status remained unclear. Most nights before sleep, I'd plead my case with Jesus, begging him to bestow upon me the faith that everyone else seemed to feel. I beseeched him to remove the thorn from my flesh, to reveal unto me what exactly made the others so eager to believe. Mostly, I wished I had already lived and died during Bible times, witnessed God's miracles and personally shaken Jesus' hand. Proudly I would have built the ark over the course of a century, just like Noah. The insults of the people only puffing my chest out further. And as the first raindrops fell in a desert land where it had never rained, I wouldn't even be the slightest surprised. Unfortunately for my eternal soul, the epoch of supernatural genocide seemed to be over, with not even a burning bush waltzing by for a fireside chat. So easily my misgivings would pass if something as basic as that could be arranged. "What's this?" Mr. Jordan exclaimed one day during morning goal check. He commandeered my chair while I stood looking over his shoulder. "Your homework slip isn't signed." The principal twisted around to look up at me in exasperation. His exhale of stale coffee choked the atmosphere between us. "But I did my homework," I pointed out. "Isn't that the main thing?" This, it turned out, was the wrong answer. "You need an attitude adjustment," Mr. Jordan concluded. I clenched, expecting him to retrieve his paddle. Instead, surprisingly, he came up with something new. Removing the green pen from his lapel and applying it to a piece of paper, he scrawled overwrougtly across the page, I will be careful to ensure my homework slip is signed by my parents and presented at goal check each day. 100 times, he instructed. During lunch break, today. I gestured across the sanctuary to the Junior Learning Center. My mom's right there. I pointed her out. A proper supervisor since completing ACE's 5-day training course. Can't you just sign it now? I dared a cheeky grin, hoping to appeal to Mr. Jordan's randomly goofy side. That'd be awesome. Awesome. Mr. Jordan's complexion darkened. Do not use this word so flippantly. Only God is awesome. Doing what you're told to do is what matters. Listen, I know you think you know it all, but you're only 11 years old, and what you're feeling is sin. How can you be so foolish to think you might know more than the people who've been walking with God since long before you were born? He sucked at his bottom lip, as if the many helpless souls he'd been burdened with were weighing down on his shoulders extra heavily today. Or maybe he was just debating another cup of coffee. He stood up, stepped around the newly designed, considerably enlarged dividers to enter the adjacent office. The warm spot he left in my vinyl chair felt wrong. Another time, Christian Life introduced Rice Day once a week, hoping to make us appreciate how it felt to starve in third world countries. Absolutely no other food was allowed on Rice Day, and being a tattler was 100% encouraged. Then, to really drive the point home, a mandatory donation of $2 was expected for a bowl of rice, regardless of whether you actually wanted it. One fine Rice Day, a friend of my sister Neve shared a cookie with her, having snuck it through until recess in her coat. Neve's eyes widening. Excitedly, she bit into sheer sweetness, just as Mr. Jordan rounded the corner with intent. Clearly tipped off. "Stop right there!" he bellowed, prancing towards her. "Out of your mouth!" Neve froze halfway between a chew and a swallow. Her round brown eyes pleaded no. Making a small choking sound, she gagged up chocolatey chips into her cupped hands. "Today is Rice Day," Mr. Jordan stated the obvious. "Throw it in the garbage." I watched Neve stare at the cookie, viscerally feeling her pain. "Toss it," Mr. Jordan insisted, unmoved. With an expression of profound loss, Neve dragged her feet towards the nearest bin. Mr. Jordan grunted. The treat dropped into the muck. "That's a good girl," he said with satisfaction. "I think you've learned a valuable lesson." I went to give her a hug, but froze halfway. The 6-inch rule was not to be broken. Another Friday found me sad as usual at the Bible memory verse table. Only this time Roman and a recently enrolled cool guy named Justin happened to be sitting there too, all of us trying our best to recall scripture. Desperately we yearned for the reward of longer breaks and less restrictions. Now, in Christian Life School's earlier years, we would have been regurgitating our required portions orally to a monitor, listening only for our mistakes. But since moving to Port Alberni, volunteering parents had grown tired of hearing the Bible repeated over and over, so it had been decided that we do it in writing instead, to be checked for errors later on. And thanks to this changed system, and Justin the new kid being clued in, we discovered the beauty of cooperation. "Hey Roman," Justin whispered for both of us to hear, "what's the end part of the first verse?" "He who is a pervert will become known," Roman shot back gleefully, like he'd been waiting his whole life for such a go-ahead. "How's the start?" I glanced down at my page, not wanting to be uncool. "He that walketh uprightly walketh surely." Anyone got the middle? Justin blinked. He that winks will make you sad, but a prating fool will fall. Managing to cobble together several more verses this way, cleverly we staggered the handing in of our papers. Triumph was in the air. Then, free at last, the final tolling of the bell before our one day of freedom came, its fading ring calling all to pack up and roll our offices away into the church's back room for storage over the preaching weekend. Yet even before the emptied sanctuary had been fully vacuumed, the three of us were ordered to the principal's office right now. And I could only thank sweet Jesus that Mr. Jordan was away at his other job, and it was his wife who beckoned us in. She usually managed to come up with punishments that didn't include a beating. Roman, John, Justin, lovely to see you boys, Mrs. Jordan greeted us, using my fake name. Her coif of upflowing brown hair made its usual attempt to heighten her squared-off, slightly tired-looking features. Its streaks of gray enhanced her growing level of respect in our world, if never to that of a hoary-headed man. Good to see you too, Mrs. Jordan, Roman replied, his entire face a bouncing grin under the harsh fluorescent lighting. Just a small thing, boys, Mrs. Jordan all too clearly held our scriptural schoolwork. Rather odd, don't you think? The Bible verses you wrote earlier today having all the same parts right. Those who pray together stay together, Roman offered boldly to Mrs. Jordan talking over him. But more importantly, all the same parts wrong. Not to mention, I found it rather interesting how you all skipped around through different Bible versions in the exact identical manner. Oh well, Roman sounded ever more bored with the whole thing. But we're not allowed to share, Justin went with. Like a spiritual connection, I said without thinking. A lucky coincidence? Mrs. Jordan thrust her sharp look straight at me. Luck? She asked rhetorically. Fortunate, maybe he means, Roman ventured, showcasing what sounded like a pompous English accent. Fortune tellers, Mrs. Jordan cut him down. Demonic things. Justin only stared, still new to Christian Life School. I'll have you rewrite your verses separately, Mrs. Jordan wrapped it up, and your first 2 lunch breaks next week will be spent in your offices. Are we clear? I nodded happily with my brother, the punishment feeling like a miraculous reprieve. Justin just looked choked. And you may consider yourselves blessed, Mrs. Jordan concluded. She stood to show us the door. I shan't mention it to Mr. Jordan, shall I? Just so long as you promise it never, ever happens again. Of course not, Mrs. Jordan, we swore. Thank you, Mrs. Jordan. Another era of 20-minute lunches commenced. Through it all, Ace Virtuson and his comic mates ventured on towards their collective destinies. It made for piss-poor entertainment, but as the workbooks had so little else going on, it sure was something when Pudge abruptly turned face to defeat the many slothful demons of his obesity, with Jesus' help. Renamed Matt Meekway in his new thin incarnation, he looks set to inherit Pigtail Becky any day now as his fit reward. Her knees never exposed since babyhood, Becky knew all the godly tricks to be the perfect neck. Ace Virtuson continued to be the exceptional Christian exception, even as his longtime disciples were emboldened by Matt and Becky's romantic lead to start pairing off heterosexually, though not interracially, as our paces made clear this wouldn't be fair to the resulting children. Eschewing human love, Virtuson instead heeded the extra sacred call of the Lord to go forth as a witness of the Word into unwelcoming, even deadly, foreign lands. Upon successfully filling in every AC question to earn his Xerox diploma, Ace had big plans to follow in the footsteps of his dead aunt and uncle, martyred a few years back in the process of planting a church and bringing the truth to the savages up in North Country. Their beautiful murders had resulted in the Vergeson family being tapped to raise their left-behind toddler twins, Hudson and Judson, as the closest next of kin. And yet, unsurprisingly, none of this swayed the biologically born Vergeson in the slightest. He knew beyond all understanding that nothing mattered more than telling the world how we were saved and they were lost. In fact, he was thrilled about the prospect of dying for Jesus. Meanwhile, on the fallen humanist front, Susie Self-Will and Ronnie Vane remained spellbound inside their prideful questioning of the Lord Jesus Christ. Self-Will still showed no immediate plans to marry into a better name, whereas Vane kept right on mocking the one who will not be mocked, until, inevitably, God stepped in to work in mysterious ways. The narrative had begun to unfold maybe 20 paces earlier, when a new ACE student bearing the unexpected name of Victor Manley ended up in Highland for reasons beyond his control. In dispassionate text, the Frensons, Loyaltons, and McMurphys discussed how a typhoon had killed Manley's nameless parents, his faceless twin brother, and completely swept away his Pacifica Island home. However, it was soon revealed that this tragedy was a blessing in disguise, an answer to Razor's recent prayer requests for a brother of his own. His family thus stepped up to adopt the directionless foreign boy, violently rescuing him from his tropical island orphanage to raise him up right under the gaze of the master. Still new to Christian life as he was, Victor Manley failed to appreciate everyone's warnings about Ronnie Vane. Manley dared think that maybe poor Vane was just a lonely soul who simply desperately needed someone to hear him out. As well, no doubt due to his early upbringing on such a wild island, Victor muchly enjoyed a thrill. And so one day, he gave in and jumped on the back of Ronnie's motorbike, completely undoing pace after pace of godly instruction to just say no. Predictably, Vane gunned the throttle hell for leather, and in his complete lack of moral direction, led to a severe accident barely half a panel on. As we learned, Victor's spinal cord had been severed, his legs now useless appendages. Completely unhurt, Ronnie, for his part, did not give a flying one. It took him just a couple of paces to go out of his way to make fun of the person he'd crippled, laughing about him being Highland's first wheelchair. But again, this morality tale was only cruel and senseless when interpreted through our broken human eyes. For behold, as soon as Manley cried out to the Lord in genuine despair, he came to recognize and appreciate God's guiding hand in all things. Being paralyzed from the waist down meant no longer wasting time daydreaming about becoming an athlete or making any plans for the future in general. Finally, he surrendered, giving himself entirely up unto our Savior. Through fitful prayer, Victor came to understand that on top of having allowed his entire family to experience horrific, painful deaths, God had thrown in the back-breaking accident as a bonus trauma to better reboot him to holy. No longer weighed down by human burdens, how heavenly it was for Manley to run and soar inside the Spirit of the Lord, his teenaged heart set free. Being attached to a couple of broken legs became an unexpected boon to Victor's walk with his father. For if even poor, shattered Manley could feel the Lord's awesome healing touch, what possible excuse could we have not to? Victor's wheelchair became his new best friend, lovingly known as God's wheelchair, always there to remind him that when it came to Jesus, he wasn't kidding around. Meanwhile, Ronnie Vane continued to not give a fuck. I could only imagine what the devil had in store for his delinquent spirit. At the same time, I became worried about my own state of grace, as I took unreasonable joy in having still working legs. Indeed, PE remained my favorite part of the school week. One ACE Christian school track meet found us taking our custom-painted Chevy vans down to Victoria, headed for the capital in a spirit of racy adventure. Now 12 years old and never stronger, I vibrated excitedly through the entire journey, eager to compete. Emerging into the uniform collage of baggy shorts, polo shirts, and oh so many colettes, I had a feeling this was going to be my day. And as the running, jumping, and throwing, and hopping progressed, it seemed I was right. I was untouchable in my age group, even challenging a couple of the older fellows. First place followed first until all 6 events were wrapped. With God's help, I had done it. I had won everything. At the medal ceremony, I readily anticipated the sound of my name spilling from the loudspeakers. I imagined stepping up before everyone to lower my head and humbly accept the Lord's pewter gold around my neck. And the moment finally came. And the winner in the 12-year-old boys category, the disembodied male voice began, standing me taller, is Joseph Smith. Pumped, I surged forward into my brain, spitting up a fuss. I paused, mid-step. My name carried a slightly different ring than what I was used to. Then I spotted the other boy, making his way through the stands, high-fiving his way to the top. His pinkly pale face was beaming. I waited for the punchline. The loudspeaker moved on to the winner of the 12-year-old girls. My medal walked off the stage without me. Knowing it was mine, because I'd literally won every event, facing such a brazen swindle, I dared to mention it to some grown-ups. They made a patient show of listening to my allegations before finally double-checking their tallies and realizing I was right. My long jump result had failed to make the leap over to the total tally sheet. Its space was left blank. The volunteer parent who'd kept track of wee little kids jumping one at a time in single file had pooped the bed and executing their task. They were forced to admit it. "You'll announce it then," I pressed, my excitement surging again. The adults passed around a cool look. The one who was a pastor bent closer. "What about the other boy?" he queried, projecting a most deep and meaningful concern. I watched his monobrow scrunch up. We can't take away his medal now. That'd be upsetting for everyone." His big head waggled about. "Nope, it just wouldn't be right." He paused, his lined palm hovering in front of my face. "I know what. We'll mail you your medal." His smile squeezed his pockmarks. "And God will reward your humility." I felt his quick pat on my head. The case was settled. No announcement was made that I had won. 2 weeks later, my medallion arrived in the post. I then put the endorsement in a box, gone from sight. The time when it mattered, long over. Well, my chance to shine was thus denied. I had ample opportunity to stand out in other ways. After all, our aggressively modest school uniforms advertised us at all times as God's witnesses in the face of the sea of lost souls engulfing our island of righteousness. Now, this was all well and good in the early Courtney years, but heading into teenage territory in Port Alberni, it brought us negative attention from the junior high school, sprawled only a few blocks away. It was 7-Eleven slushies exploding against our heads in the spring, face washing with dirty snow come winter. All this was inevitably accompanied by the soundtrack of Satan, Satan, and I love the devil. Rebuking them in the name of Jesus only made it worse. One fine Friday, I despaired of being a martyr for the truth. I was 14, and oh my Lord, I yearned to be cool. That same morning, I had folded into my duffel bag my non-iron beige pair of pleated trousers and my neon pink Ocean Pacific t-shirt. Feeling titillated about it through the whole day, when the school bell tolled freedom, I quickly scurried into the boys' washroom to change into these excitingly normal clothes. At the last possible moment, Mr. Jordan spotted me, darting for the main doors. Registering my shockingly pink top, his neck snapped audibly in my direction. "Where do you think you're going?" he shouted down the hallway. "Home!" I croaked defiantly. Mr. Jordan's entire skull went dark. "Not like that. Put your uniform back on now. You're to be an example." Meekly, I retraced my steps. But then, as if driven by something more powerful than my fear, I slid out a side door, set along the way. Exodus, to my legs threatening collapse, positively terrified now. I hustled into the shallow gully behind the school, coming up and out 1 block over. I made straight for home. Just like any other kid, I whispered to myself, the threat of what lay behind me diminishing with every step I managed forward. My eyes feasted on my fluorescently earthy ensemble. "I don't give a number 2. I dared a bit louder. I approached the perpendicular crossroads just before the train tracks promised certain escape. And here I almost soiled my pleated pants. All the face washing and thrown slushies, all were as nothing compared to what thundered and roared before me now, screeching and squealing around the 90-degree corner, pretty much on 2 wheels. Hunched over hard in the driver's seat, Mr. Jordan torqued the steering column of his family car like Cruella de Vil's older brother. His eyeballs locked onto mine, and he accelerated his 2,000-pound vehicle straight for me. I turned and bolted towards the train tracks, sprinting hard through a wooded area of overgrown trails and splashing straight across a rocky creek without a second thought. Deep into the trees on the far side, I jinked for hundreds of yards, slowing to breathe only when my lungs said no more, diving to hide under a bush, still quivering. I struggled to hear beyond my own gasps, half expecting to register the baying of unleashed hounds come to flush me out. But there was only the hum of mosquitoes. Rerouting through the woods up towards the open train tracks, my 2 soakers squelching, I reached the steel rails and balanced my way atop them for home. I didn't tell anyone what I'd begun to think couldn't really have happened. And oddly enough, no one seemed to have heard about it. The weekend passed brutally to every phone call harbingering doom. Come Monday morning, way too soon, I forced myself back into Christian life with a fragile spirit, tiptoeing to my office in the corner of the learning center. I didn't know what to think when Mr. Jordan only nodded in the direction of me, pretending to set goals. He went on to say nothing, and I began to think I must have lost my mind for real. Becoming worried that Mr. Jordan's bizarrely passive decorum perhaps trumpeted the impending end of the world, I opened my English pace and stumbled straight into its very first comic. Ronnie Vane had traded in his back-snapping motorcycle for a red convertible sports car. He was now holding an angled split-panel phone conversation with Susie Southwell. "So what if you don't have a license or insurance anymore? You still have a car, don't you?" Southwell wheedled through the line, cajoling him to go for a spin. Without Jesus, she obviously didn't understand how insurance worked, and Vane's worldly need to always be cruel ensured she got her way. "Do you have to speed?" Susie questioned, somewhat concerned, in the very next box. "No problem," Vane replied, a toothpick spooling about his grinning lips, his silent thought bubble reading just a little over the limit. Suddenly, a truck comes out of nowhere and a cry fills the air. I'm not ready to die! Honk, screech, crash! Life certainly has no guarantees, ponders one of the gurney men inside his bubble, rolling the corpse of self-will through the back open doors of what is likely meant to be an ambulance. It's a miracle you got it alive, another stranger says to Ronnie a panel over. This one carries a stethoscope and is dressed in a green doctor's coat. I'm very sorry about your friend, though. Susie's dead because I thought I could get away with it one more time, mutters Vane, his skull wrapped in loose bandages. His broken right arm hangs in a very blue sling, and there's a close-up of a tear on his cheek, dripping past a pink band-aid. Later, at the police station. What's going to happen to him, officer? Asked the back of someone's skull, staring across the room at Ronnie sitting with his head in his hands in front of a desk sergeant. Even though the other driver was at fault, it's going to be hard on him, the stoic cop with the glasses replies from the right, his arms folded. No insurance, no license. What a man sows, he also reaps, is some random man's thought process concluding the final frame. I sat stunned that such a total assassination could truly be the end of it. Mindlessly, I stared at nothing. At lunch break, Michael, the youngest of Mr. Jordan's 3 kids, same age as me, ambled over to where I sat slowly chewing on my peanut butter and banana sandwich. Why'd you take off on Friday? He asked casually. I blinked at his earnest expression. What? You were there? Yeah, I was in the navigator's seat. He offered me an oddly off-putting show of concern. Why'd you run? My dad wasn't going to hurt you. He only wants what's best for us.